This video is a recording of a live event, about an hour and 15-minute webinar, and it's really packed with all sorts of energy healings and information and explorations into the fine abstract layers of creation. I hope you love it. If you do, please like and subscribe. Today's webinar is Keys to Effective Energy Healing, and my intention behind this particular title and this idea was that I really, really want to see each one of you like so deeply empowered to do energy healing yourself. Like, I want this. I want to be an effective mouthpiece for this process, as in such a way that everybody who is all of us that are here together joining, that we're all walking away from today's webinar just feeling so empowered and so clear and so resourced and transformed in a way that each person feels like they really own the tools that they need to become incredible and to be the incredible energy healers that you, in a sense, you already are, because your healing potential is already in you. But just to be able to use the webinar setting as a tool for waking that up and empowering you and so forth. So that's the idea of the title of today's, not printed off the printer, Keys to Effective Energy Healing, is to get right into the fundamentals and make sure that for everybody participating that those are really well established. However, when I thought about it, I realized that we've been doing webinars for several years, and I know some of you have been with me since the very start. And so naturally, we've gone over a lot of the fundamentals of energy healing, and this session also needs to be really relevant and provide new perspectives for people who've been with me for a while. So just letting you know, that's kind of where I'm at with it, is kind of balancing both. So as usual, I'll start with a brief description for the new people of what is energy healing, and then we'll have 3 minutes of silence, and then I'll do a brief prayer of gratitude, which I always do to start things off, and then we'll dive into today's topic. And I think it's going to be really interesting. So I know I feel like I'm in a different place, so let's just see how this all goes. Energy healing is a process of waking up or activating your natural healing potential. Everybody has the ability to heal themselves, and the body is constantly healing itself. But sometimes situations and circumstances arise that don't seem to heal. So the question is, we want to go into like the junction point between the body's natural tendency, if you get like a little cut or something and the body heals up, what's the difference between the body just spontaneously, naturally healing something like that, and then if it doesn't heal something else, it ends up being more like a chronic condition or a more serious illness that we go to the doctor and the doctor says, oh dear, things don't look good. So the idea of energy healing is to transition awareness, because awareness is our tool, in such a way that we can have the same incredibly effective spontaneous healing for all kinds of conditions and situations and circumstances, even life circumstances and relationships and things like manifesting. All that field can be just as simple and spontaneously set back in balance through consciousness. We use consciousness or awareness. That's how energy healing works. Everything is comprised of consciousness, so we're activating or harnessing the potential, the infinite potential of consciousness to produce the effects that raise life to a higher quality and allow all the fullness that you deserve and that is necessary for your ability to fulfill your heart's desire in this lifetime, that you have access to all that. You need to have access to all that. And it's not so hard to get. So that's what we're doing in these energy healing sessions, is opening that up, awakening that. All right, thanks for being with me. If we need more explanations as we're going along, then those will just kind of slide in. Um, the reason we have 3 minutes of silence at the beginning of these sessions is because that infinite potential of consciousness is accessible through each person's own direct anchor or link to the source of creation. And the source of creation is an infinite ocean. Oh, hence the ocean picture behind me is an infinite ocean of pure potential, home of all the laws of nature. All this I'm borrowing from my own background as a TM teacher, as a meditation teacher for many decades, using the same terminology that I learned from my teacher Maharishi, who left such a legacy to this world. I really don't have words to describe my gratitude or appreciation of the depth of that gift. So anyway, that's just another facet in the process. You don't have to practice TM in order to get the benefit of all this. It's just that ocean of consciousness and all the mechanics by which the ocean of consciousness rises up and manifests as the material field of creation, all that structure and all that really fine, deep down, profound understanding requires a language. And he went in and provided much of that and drew deeply upon Vedic tradition, Vedic science, because the ancients were looking at the world from a perspective rather different from the one that we use today. In our modern world, there's a lot more emphasis on the surface and on the material effects or byproducts of consciousness, and a little bit less about like the inner mechanics. So, we have to draw on some terminology to help describe those levels of experience that aren't so commonly shared or passed around in today's world. That's all. Okay, I'm going to ask everyone to close the eyes for about 3 minutes, looking at the time. And when I ask you to open the eyes, take a minute or so to slowly open the eyes, coming out of the silence slowly, because the slower we come out, the more we integrate of that great, vast, eternal, unbounded, pure field of consciousness. All right, let's close our eyes. I just realized if I click on that, yeah. Let's slowly open the eyes. That silence is so luscious. It's like the 3 minutes just goes by just like nothing. It's so incredibly rich, beautiful, exquisite silence. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything, for being all of us, and all of us here together in this webinar. The collective, our collective, like the sum is greater than, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. I think that's the principle there. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So thank you for our collective as well as our individual presence and participation. Thank you for the universe around each one of us. How the universe shows up for each person in this healing session. Thank you to the eternal tradition of wisdom for stabilizing the connection between the unmanifest source of creation and the entire manifest field of creation. Thank you for our ability to work concisely and efficiently. Thank you all for supporting me to be the voice of this collective. Thank you. I really appreciate our hour together. May it be fruitful and great. May it be successful. May we successfully accomplish our intentions for tonight's webinar. I appreciate each one of you so much, so much. Okay, so keys to effective energy healing. As you know, over the last 5 years, and it looks like lots of questions. I better open my question box as well because I don't want to miss anything. Yeah, the question, did the baby arrive? Yes, the baby arrived. The baby's super beautiful. I could just spend an hour talking about babies, but I'm not going to do that. We've got work to do here, so. Yes, here's one lady coming in with a reminder that California fire, healing please. The hill just 3 blocks from her house caught fire. We were in mandatory, other people are raising hands too, mandatory evacuation, all contained and safe now, but it's really intense. It's a question about Mother Divine. Okay, beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. As I mentioned before, we've had whole webinars on each of the different keys of energy healing. So I was looking for a new way to think about it and to approach the issue. And the thought arose that there are basic steps, and these are the same in Western medicine and any energy healing, in any healing process. We have these basic steps. The first step is one recognizes that something is amiss. The next step is to clearly diagnose what is the source of the problem. What is the source of the problem? And then, once the problem has been clearly defined, the next step is to manifest the antidote to the problem, right? To bring up the antidote and to apply it, to apply the antidote, and then to enjoy the transformation. In energy healing, all of these steps happen directly from consciousness. They happen directly in the field of consciousness. Even the illness, even the imbalance, anything that we manifest, anything that manifests is an expression of the source of creation, somehow coming up to the surface, either in a complete form or an incomplete form. And generally, the principle is the expressions that we find that are incomplete are defined as unhappy. All pain, trauma, suffering of all various types is arising as an incomplete form of the divine, because there's nothing that's outside of the divine. The divine source of creation is literally behind everything. So nothing is actually away from divinity. It's just that if the form is incomplete, the potential for the divine to be fully present isn't being expressed. And when that potential isn't being fully expressed, then we feel something is amiss. Something isn't okay in the body. So we want completion, wholeness, totality, balance. And in fact, I think the word health comes from the same root as the word wholeness. I think there's some relationship. Maybe my experts, my linguistic experts out there can verify that, but I'm pretty sure that health and wholeness kind of go together. Completeness. So the first principle that I wanted to bring up, even though there's actually a principle before this, but we're going to go to the second before the first, because we need to, I'm trusting that each one of you knows when you don't feel good. You know what pain feels like. So we're not going to worry too much about like, oh, is something wrong? Like, you know when something's wrong. I trust you, you know it. But we're going to go directly into the diagnostic part of this process, because diagnosis in energy healing is different from diagnosis in Western medicine, for instance. And at this point in our session, I did want to bring out the fact that if something's really wrong, there's no shame in approaching that problem from many different angles and seeing what the Western medical approach has to say about it. Now, of course, the Western medical approach is all about the surface, right? They look at the physicality of the body and they say it's this tissue or it's this organ or it's this function, and something is amiss there. Maybe there's some chemical that the body isn't producing, neurochemical or something, hormone the body isn't producing properly, but there's a value in that. Because, anyway, all honor to Western medicine. It's not that energy healing comes to entirely replace Western medicine, but certainly to provide an angle that provides a deeper perspective into the healing process. Because as much as I respect Western medicine, not always are complete solutions found. And always, even if a good solution is found, it's because the patient found within themselves, on the level of their consciousness, the healing that they needed. And so, as I said, we'll go into that point in just a minute. But the diagnosis is based on a principle that we've talked about a lot, but we've never talked about it from this perspective. And that is the hero's journey. You've heard me talk about it. This very simple principle, especially for the people who are new here, is that one unbounded ocean of being, I'm using my diagram, one unbounded ocean of pure, unmanifest, quality-less, eternal being appears as the universe. It appears as many. So one appears as many. But then the one goes in and integrates with the many. It becomes more like knit inside the many. And it creates this wonderful forms. I was gonna bring a form up in my pictures back here and I didn't do it for you, so could you please make a note for me to bring up the tsunami picture? The tsunami picture, yeah. From a friend in England. Anyway, she'll be with us tomorrow, because the whole universe is expressing the same patterns over and over and over and over again, like a fractal, right? So the hero's journey is like a way that we as humans really comfortably wrap our awareness around this pattern, this fundamental pattern, which in the fractal of the universe is expressed at every point. And that is the one appears as many, then it enters into the many, and through that process, evolution occurs. The one evolves. The one evolves through this process. It's really pretty, like, it's simple, right? The hero's journey is more of a detailed version of that story, and every organ and every function and every cell and every part of our bodies tells that story. So as a diagnostic tool, it's very useful because the hero's journey has a sort of set pattern that it follows. And different organs and different functions and different parts of the body tend to reflect different specific aspects of that pattern or different points in that journey. For example, one lady asked a question. She said that she has had pain in her duodenum, which is a little area, it's like, kind of like a little organ that's between the stomach and the intestines. And she was saying, could I bring it up in today's session, and could we take a look at that? So I appreciate that we have an example. The digestive system, of course, is the whole hero's journey from start to finish, but each of the different phases of the digestive system reflect different phases of the hero's journey. So this point about the duodenum is when the hero is moving. The hero starts out home, safe and happy, and thinks, oh, my life is so simple, tomorrow I'll just become the king. But then is passed out onto his journey and has to start with the mouth of being very sensitive and aware, and then comes into the neck area where we make order out of chaos. And also the thyroid has this just wonderful role of kind of being like a prophet that looks into the future. And that's what it does in the digestion. It looks at the food as it's passing and says, oh, this food's oily, I'm going to need more bile, or this food's got a lot of carbohydrate in it, so I'm going to need more particular enzymes to break it down. And so then it sends messages ahead, it sends messages out ahead to the other organs, and so that your digestive organs know how to prepare themselves to handle that particular food. So this happens on the hero's journey. The hero goes out and it's all chaos, and then he has to start making order out of chaos, and the teeth are like the boundaries that stop him from just turning around and just going back home again. He can't. Teeth are really tough, right? They're like, no, you can't just turn around and be the king tomorrow. You have to go out on your journey, So the teeth, and that starts the breaking down process of everything that's not true of the prince. Everything's not true of the prince. Anyway, this whole heart energy center and chest area represents the part of the journey when the hero has gone out and he's sort of accepted his fate. I'm going to have to go on this journey. Don't know what's in store for me there, but we'll just take this as it comes. This area is where he bumps into the wise individuals who endow him with various pieces of knowledge that he'll need on his journey, tools. Sometimes the hero gets some kind of magical objects, sometimes magical weapons, sometimes just magical objects, but whatever the case, he kind of acquires the things he needs. And part of that acquisition process is the area of the digestion where we start accessing digestive enzymes, hormones, things like stomach fluid and bile. These are the tools. These are the tools that the hero needs on his journey. And they're not baby tools. They're not tools for the timid. There's nothing pleasant, right? Certain of these, like stomach acid. Stomach acid is hot. And it's not just a thing that you want to get on you, right? So there's a there's a process at that part of the journey where the hero has to really learn how to use his tools. This isn't something new. He has to let go of certain sense of self and aspects of his own nature in order to surrender into this process of being on the journey, and then having these very powerful tools and being able to use them with discrimination and measured regularity. We've talked about that a lot. So that the results of using the tools, putting attention on digestion, right? So my own digestion saying, hello. Anyway, so the use of the tools is the most effective. It's optimized. Then there's this part of the journey that's right between the stomach. After the food, we could say the food leaves the stomach and starts to move down into the intestines. This is the part of the hero's journey where he's kind of had the fun birthday part, right? It's the birthday part. It's like, oh, here, have this magic object and have this magic weapon and have all these nice resources to fight your enemy. But then there's this point where it's like, okay, now you got to go fight the enemy, right? Because there's this part of the hero's journey, the critical point in the hero's journey, where the hero eventually ends up at the gates of hell, where there's a, what is it, like so usually a dragon or some kind of guardian at the gate. He has to first fight the guardian at the gate, then he gets to go in and face his greatest fears. So this is like, that's sort of like the most intense part of the journey, right? So the duodenum sits at the part of the journey, the part of the system, where the hero has had his fun. He's had a full stomach for a while, and that was satisfying. Now the stomach starts to empty. And it's the part of the journey where he starts to move into his greatest, you could say, emptiness, because the digestive process requires stripping away all superfluous forms, all superfluous elements in the food, and coming down to the essential self. We could say coming down to the essential self. And you can imagine that as consciousness or awareness dives deeper and deeper and deeper, closer to the ocean of silence, all that is not essential is stripped away. And when one finds oneself fully identified, fully resting in totality, only the essential self remains. And the only way for the hero to get into hell is when all the non-essentials have been stripped away. And there's nothing but the original source, the pure, real truth of who one is. It's required, because that's a safe way. That's the way to go into hell safely. I hope YouTube doesn't censor me for using this word. Should we be, oh, never mind. Okay. The duodenum, when the food goes into the duodenum, there's a similar, it's about halfway, right? Through this, from the mouth down to the eliminative organs. And there's kind of like, if you think of the process as a circle, it's kind of like the halfway of the original setting out on the hero's journey, the original. When it's like, oh, I thought things were just going so nicely, and now here I am out on the streets, I have to fend for myself, and I don't know where I'm going. There's something like a little bit similar to that happens at the duodenum. It's like, well, I've been out traveling around, I got all these cool tools, everything is fun and blissful, and now I have to like actually go do what I have to do, like the meaty part of my journey. I have to actually do the scary part or the hard part. And that's the revelation or the realization that happens in the duodenum. Is now the food has to go through this incredible transformation, which it does in the intestines. It goes through this just huge stripping away, huge breaking down and refinement of its process. So that's the fear. It's fear that sits in the duodenum of, oh, okay, now I did all the fun part, now I have to do the hard part. So we're clearing, just doing some clearing for everyone. It only comes up, it's all divine. My lady in Holland who asked the question only asked because we all can use this information. We all could use a healthier duodenum. We all could enjoy our healing process, our digestive process being optimized. This brings me, so this is the hero's journey. And the hero's journey really is incredibly helpful for diagnosing what it is. What is the problem? And you can see we just use it as an example to diagnose what is the problem with the duodenum. And these will always be the laws of nature of the duodenum, because that's what it does. It is that junction between the stomach and the intestines. So it's always going to sit at that part of the process when you had your initial shock of like, okay, now I'm a mom, or okay, now I'm not going to be the king tomorrow like I thought I was. And then you kind of resign to that, and then you realize, oh, when I resign to it, oh, things get better. Look, I'm getting all these gifts, I'm getting all these resources that I need to do my thing. And then you're like, okay, but now I have to do my thing. And so that's right where the duodenum is. Sweethearts. I'm just feeling a lot of healing for that part of everyone's body. All right, so the next key, so the hero's journey is one of the keys, and it's a key for diagnosis, specifically, it's a key for diagnosis. All understanding that because of the fractal in nature, and I promise I'll bring the picture tomorrow, and we'll also put the picture in when we send the recordings, so everybody can have the picture, you can look at it, you can enjoy it, you can refer to it. In the meantime, the next really important key to energy healing, and I'm bringing these keys out in this specific order because I know that everybody in this session, no matter how new you are to energy healing, you can get these, you can grasp these keys, right? Like, even if you'd never heard of energy healing before, we all, since time immemorial, since all times of humanity, since before the written language ever even existed, since even before the time of agriculture, the hero's journey was told as a story over and over and over again. So we all kind of have a sense of that. We all have access to it. All I have to say is the hero's journey, and we're all like, oh yes, that story. That story that's been repeated over in every Hollywood movie and every tradition in every language, every culture. The next key, also accessible to all of us, is creating that sacred safe space. And I've referred to this before. We've talked about creating a safe space before, and we've done energy healings for that as well. But I just want to bring it forward again in a slightly different form because it is such a basic fundamental key. The principle here is that the energy healing process really only happens let me put it this way. Your pure healing potential is catalyzed, it is awakened into work. So we've done the diagnosis, right? So the next step is let's get the energy healing, let's get the antidote or the solution going. The antidote comes forward as your healing potential expressed. And what wakes up the energy healing potential or gets it moving is compassion. Compassion. That's why so many healers and so many people who support talk about the importance of the heart center, the heart energy center. So what happens when one is not well is that discordant feelings dominate. And we can think of illness as karma. Usually there's some karmic connection when there's illness. Is something One is dealing with the returns from past actions. And karma, necessarily, the structure of karma is that it has this protective coating around it. Karma is in the form of knots of threads of consciousness which are not doing their job. Threads of consciousness are comprised of awareness on the move. Consciousness, the big ocean of consciousness, starts to appear as diversity, and then it moves. It moves. When it's here in its own resting in silence, it's not moving around. Whatever move is there is so, it's such an inward move that it's not defined at this level as manifest in any way. But when it starts to manifest, it moves across, there's a move across this gap between the unmanifest ocean of being and the manifest field of creation. So there's a first move. Threads, all the threads that make up the great web of life, all these threads are awareness moving. In TM terms, the terminology is being, becoming, right? For those of you for whom that is a familiar term, being, becoming, wholeness on the move, consciousness, awareness, moving. So these threads, they are responsible for, they comprise the scaffolding of the entire manifest field of creation, and they have purpose, and they are ancient, and they are necessary. But when returns on past actions are coming, what happens is threads get out of place, like like a tapestry or a piece of cloth, or maybe a piece of clothing that's grown old. You get loose threads, and you get places where the threads are worn or something like that. So what happens with the karma is we get these situations where the threads aren't really fulfilling their function in the most complete way, and they get twisted and locked into positions that give rise to expressions on the surface of ongoing unpleasantness. And around this knot, we can say it's a knot of threads of consciousness, are feelings. Feelings are create like a shell around it. And the feelings are unpleasant enough that until your consciousness is awakened and ready to unravel those threads, those feelings will deter you from moving forward. There's an illusion here that the discordant feelings are that they go all the way in, or that the discordant feelings are the karma itself. They're just, I'm smiling because my light is, I've never come to you from this place before, and the sun is bouncing off of buildings over there and shining in and changing the perspective. The light is changing positions in order to give us different types of perspective on what's going on. So anyway, thank you for bearing with me. It's all new to me. We're moving to new territory together, and I appreciate that. The discordant feelings are like the guardian at the gate. They're the guardian at the gate. That he has to get through that knot of discordant feelings before he can actually get in and untie the threads that have gotten into the wrong place. So the reason the heart, the compassion and mercy of the heart becomes the implement, the catalyst for the healing process, is that it creates a counter-resonation for those discordant feelings. And also, the heart wisdom shines this light into the whole structure of the karmic knot, so that you suddenly realize, oh, it's not just like oceans and oceans of anger and fear and misery and trauma and pain. It's just a little skin. It's like an illusion that's just sitting on the outside of this knot of karma. And if I can just gather the courage to address it directly, I'll move through that skin of discordant feelings, and then I will have entered into the area where the real healing can actually start to take place. So the discordant feelings have this role of locking the imbalance into your system at a fine level, on the level of consciousness, in the area where the scaffolding of the manifest world resides. And this is one of the reasons why energy healing is so absolutely fascinating and such a joy to practice, because it brings us again and again and again into these like subtle inner mechanisms that are behind the entire manifest field of creation. And it's just so fascinating. Every time more is understood and learned about, every time one goes through that cycle of healing, one understands and learns more about it. And it's just beautiful. It's just really beautiful. It's a process of learning about yourself, because this whole structure is the structure of the self. And as awareness moves into these finer levels and we start to look and examine what's going on there, whoops, not to hit my microphone too hard here. This is the divine wending its way into the manifest field of creation. This is where the totality becomes one with its own expression. This is where it evolves. This is where the hero finally does that great deed, that great act of heroism that allows him to return home a king, having earned the title of king. The heart. The heart does it. The heart, when it's pinched, with it, you come up across that skin, that outer crust of discordant feelings, then the heart feels pinched. But the heart's ability to produce waves of compassion, which is what it is designed to do, even when facing the most discordant feelings, the darkest, most unpleasant expressions of creation, the heart still has the ability to find the spark of the divine within. After all, there's a reason why there is this crust of discordant feelings around a knot of karma. Like, we don't want to go, the hero doesn't want to go barreling into hell when he's not ready, when he hasn't stripped back enough to his essential nature to be safe. So really, this part of the process, this very important step in the healing process, is about being safe. Really, this is what it is. And what makes us feel safe is knowing that we are loved by ourself. Ooh, there's a lot in that, right? We're loved by ourselves, unconditionally accepted, unconditionally appreciated, recognized, adored, allowed, unconditionally allowed to be whatever we are or whatever we have been. And particularly, I'm seeing this coming up as a healing right now, is to use this opportunity again to kind of like exercise what we're learning here with this particular fundamental, which is the fundamental of feeling safe. Why? Because when you feel safe, then you can be vulnerable. And when you can be vulnerable, the part of you that needs to heal can open up, and you can reveal, and you can see what actually needs to happen there, and make the changes required in a way that allows you to maintain dignity and comfort, being safe. Being safe is super important. But, okay. Part of the blockage, because I'm looking into the field of our collective, we've got a lot of people here, and part of the blockage to feeling safe is that there are memories and impressions from the past of not being safe. And along with that, memories and impressions are also locked in like traumas, and they're also discordant feelings connected to and associated with those traumas. And they tend to cycle back into like sort of like self-blame, if you will. It's very dry here in Arizona, so excuse me 1 second. Please, could you get me my water? I'm sorry. I got here and I started in and I'm like, oh, I forgot my water. I can make it an hour and 15 minutes, no problem. My water's over there in the bedroom. Thank you. Where I was meditating. Thank you. It's so nice to have someone to do these webinars with. I feel like I feel safe. I feel like I have a support system. And you in the past, at those times, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Oh, and this is cool because it matches my background. So it's like, it's okay for me to drink here. I'm like all color coordinated. Thank you for understanding, everybody. In this part of the country, it's really important to drink lots. Like I've been through like 5 of these today or something. I don't know. Just keep going. As long as I'm here in Arizona, I will probably have some water with me. Anyway. The heart feels pinched by those discordant feelings, but the heart absolutely has to bring up that feeling of compassion and forgiveness and unconditional recognition and awareness. So what we're doing at this point in our session is you in the present moment who've been through all of the trials and tribulations that you of the past had been through, and all those moments where you experienced trauma or you were suffering in some way or another, no worries, because now you're here and now you're not in that space anymore. So you in the present condition can put your awareness back through time, and even if it's not super clear, even if the perception isn't refined enough to go in and isolate out every single instance, because when we do this, we're going back through centuries and centuries and centuries of the human experience, right? For ourselves, and because we're a healing collective, also for the collective. And here we can also bring in for the fires, because that's been going on for centuries and centuries. And it touches many, many people. And this will always happen. When you heal yourself, that mechanism that promotes the self-healing, it speaks to the whole universe. Like the web of life, we're connected to the web of life. And so the whole web of life goes, oh, look at this healing that's happening. How beautiful, right? And oh, this is the way the path opens up. But we go back with awareness, because consciousness can do that. It's not bound by space or time. It goes back into the past. And even, as I said, if the details are unclear, that's not a problem. We just gently allow the sense of it. Oh, a friend of mine who's a writer and a teacher, teacher of writing and teacher of literature, sent me phrases out of great hero's journey story, Beowulf, from the past. And in the original language, then he gives the line, the original language, and then the line is translated into English. Such rich nuance of just deep, clear expression of what life was like in this time that this story was written. Absolutely exquisite. It was like he opened through the words, how the words changed over time. You know, how the shape and the form of the words changed over time, gave such an exquisitely clear picture of what that quality of life was. Hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Absolutely beautiful. And we live through these times. Our souls as human beings, we're only here now because so many lifetimes of evolution and development have brought us to this point. So we're able to go back and find those moments of delicacy or vulnerability and provide the unconditional recognition and support and love from the present moment that the past moments were unable to find at the time, and that was responsible for pinching the heart and creating the conditions and situations that gave rise to the trauma originally. One of the things that we do as this is happening is we break through long-held vicious cycles and patterns of human belief that if you suffer because you suffered, there's something inherently wrong with you. And that's just that we break it down. Let's break it down and look at it under the microscope. That needs to be unpacked. Is that suffering of the past, even sometimes just physical suffering, then was reflected in the ego. Because the ego is the sense of self, right? The ego is who you know yourself to be. And so what happens is, oh, I'm having a rough time, things are not well. Well, that means that I'm a bad person. So there's the ego. The ego gets sort of, there's a pattern. It's like a little pattern of sort of like transferring the trauma and the pain over to the sense of self. It's an old pattern, and it's been sitting in the collective field for ages upon ages. It's only possible because the sense of self was incomplete. Because the sense of self was incomplete, that vicious cycle is possible. So our job, when we see something, and it's not, we're seeing this thing, and we're seeing it going back through time, centuries and centuries, for the ancestors, for the past lives, we're seeing for the whole collective of humanity, ages upon ages, has been under the grip of this vicious cycle. When we see it, then it means that the divine is presenting a gift to be transformed, to be completed, to be brought back to wholeness. And this sense of self being isolated, misunderstood, identified with the manifest field of creation, but not able to identify with wholeness, right? It's identifying with the parts, but not with the whole. And there, the ego tends to sit down here at this deeper level, like less manifest level of self. So up here, physical body, but then deeper levels are more abstract, more refined, more unbounded. So ego tends to sit down. And so that what it means is that we've come up across this stress that sits at a very deep level. So anytime, and that's like the hero going into the hero's journey, right? We have to strip away all the excess baggage in order to get down to the essential. And the essential self, right? And then the ego is there. That sense of self is down there very deep. So stripping away all the superfluous material away from the ego so that the ego understands, the sense of self is understood in terms of totality or wholeness. That what it's not really, there isn't really a separate individual ego, that it's really one divine being expressing itself as the multiplicity of the creation, and then as the one enters into the multiplicity, the whole multiplicity understands I am one, and this is the evolution of being. And so that cycle, like that would be the hero's journey in a nutshell, right? Is being administered from the level of the present self and the present consciousness into this field of the self and the past, and all those moments when the pain and trauma multiplied itself with this vicious cycle by folding onto the ego and saying, well, the reason I'm suffering is because I'm a bad person. I deserve to suffer. I'm disposable. No. Only because it's at that ego level that the last flop of the wave of the divine entering into the material field, that's where it's happening. That's like the ego sitting there in the gap. Like, I didn't know this. I didn't know this, you guys. I know this because we're doing this together. You are doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm doing something. I'm also doing it, but we're doing it together. This is not just... It's reflecting back on the ego now. This is what it is. This is why it's doing it like this. This is what you are magnificent. This is your magnificence showing. This is that divine spark of being showing up at the individual level, an expression of self. This is the divine swirling into... I got to get that. Please let me remember to bring up the tsunami picture. Tsunami picture, not Sue. Anyway, you get it. It's swirling. It's swirling. The tsunami, it swirls. And swirling right down here in the gap between divine being and all the expressions of divine being. There's only divine being. It's swirling. It's swirling. And it's evolving through that process. And that evolution is happening for ego. It's happening in the ego, with the ego, around the ego. The ego as it relates to other aspects and parts of the self. Particularly how it interfaces at those critical moments when life was really tough. Your presence of awareness with yourself in the past, at those moments when life was really tough, it brings comfort. It anchors that spark of divine truth. And it illustrates or acts as an example of how the individual has to strip back to its essential nature in order to handle or navigate through those difficult situations. Because there is this stripping thing that happens. And the stripping is like, we can think of it as the purification. There's a purification that occurs. Purification is traditionally relegated to an area of, like, it tends to be that we think of it as like kind of unpleasant or something. Purification isn't really considered the more fun part of the hero's journey. But the truth is that owning and handling that purification process it makes you really strong, and it gives you that extra, it's like an extra tool. I guess we could think of purification as maybe one of the keys to effective energy healing, because the purification is absolutely necessarily part of the healing process. It's that part where you let go of all the bits and pieces that are holding or locking the suffering in place. And the compassion is there with the purification in order to create like a cushion around the experience so that it's gentler. Everything is clearly identified and recognized. There's enough discrimination. Discrimination comes together with the compassion element from the heart in order to create a context in which the purification is handleable. You can deal with it. I don't want to miss all the questions. I don't want to miss the questions. So let's go in, because it really is time right now. We only have a few minutes left of our session. So, and of course, if there are any questions that I don't get to today, we'll usually start out with questions tomorrow. But she says she's excited to be connecting with the Divine Mother of the Universe. Oh, you're so sweet. So yes, we've been speaking on the Divine Mother of the whole universe throughout in terms of the hero's journey, because the Divine Mother of the Universe is all of this. It's all of this. It's the entire process. It's the entire field. It's the unmanifest appearing as many and then realizing it is also the many, and then through that process evolving. It is all of this, all of this, all of this. So what does that mean? If every organ and every function, every system of the self is that, it means you are the mother of the universe. The unique, when we moved to Arizona, another feature of this life in Arizona is that our family owns a dog. And at home, my husband and I didn't own a dog, but here our children own a dog. And so I was really taking a deep inside look. Oh yeah, other people own dogs too, yeah. I mean, they're lovely beings. They're just so sweet, dogs and cats, and they're lovely, and they're traveling on this evolutionary journey with us. And so I thought, well, now that I have the presence of this very sweet being, let's see what's what. Shall we look at it from the angle of energy healing? And what I found was that the human nervous system has the unique capacity to not only directly experience this process, but to know that it is experiencing this process, and to engage with the process from the angle of knowingness. Everything comes from the source of creation. So all the other living things in our world, they also are anchored to the source of creation. And on some level or another, they all know it. They all know that, when I met this nice pet of my son and his wife, I thought to myself, she loves being a dog. I could tell she loved it. And she thought of herself as a wonderful dog. She would prance around the backyard and be all kind of like, if you threw something and she picked it up, she'd be all Victoria style, like, I got that stick, that was me, winning. She was all really just full of herself as a dog, and so happy to be a dog, enjoying dogginess. So wholeness enjoys dogginess, but it enjoys humanness, it enjoys all of these forms. But the thing that the dog doesn't do is the dog doesn't consciously, intentionally discriminate out the fine mechanics of what actually is going on in this process. She's sweet and she's good and she's connected to wholeness, and she knows she exercises her intelligence in a beautiful way, and wholeness knows itself through her. But she doesn't really know herself through wholeness the way human knows themselves through wholeness. Because human, with our nice fat prefrontal cortices, we have this analysis and synthesis capacity that the dog just doesn't have. For instance, she doesn't get jokes. Yeah, puns just go right over her head. There are a lot of things she just doesn't get. And, one of those things is the joke of the universe, we could say. So the mother of the universe is present in every expression and every part of creation. But in the human being, because of our nervous systems, the mother creation has this opportunity to evolve in this completely fully ripened form. And this is another really important point that came out of this realization. God bless Penny the dog. Her name's Penny. She's such a good girl too, and very pretty. But anyway, that all beings come from the being, right? One appears as many. So that means that some beings are fully physically manifest and some beings are not fully physically manifest, right? We've talked about this before. Some are like energy forms. So we think, well, these energy forms we can sometimes defining as angels or ascended masters or, other types of more energy beings. even energy beings from other planets and so forth. They don't have physical nervous systems. There probably are those with physical nervous systems, but if they don't have physical nervous systems, if they don't, the experience of integration of totality into its parts is not as complete as if one has a physical nervous system. Human beings. This adds to the healing we were doing earlier. Because there's that yes, but as a human, I'm inherently flawed, right? That's another piece of that vicious cycle that has been going on for centuries upon centuries. Well, because I'm human, I'm naturally, inherently flawed, born in sin, conceived, ill-conceived or something. It's the human nervous system, the instrument through which the divine fully ripens into the material field of expression. It's very special. It's really precious. It's precious in a way it hasn't been recognized as such for centuries upon centuries. See how beautiful you are? There's a lot of shifting going on in the heart energy center with that one. I'm just enjoying that shift, the beauty of it. Beautiful question about Mother Divine. Thank you. Hellos and thank yous. Very sweet. We have people here with their loved ones. Everybody gets the benefit of these webinars. If you didn't know that the webinars are sold on a per location basis, you can invite as many friends as you want, and everybody benefits, and everybody gets the recordings afterwards. Whether you participate in one webinar or the weekend set, you get both recordings, and you are welcome to share them widely with as many people as you like. And even watching the webinars after the fact, in the recording session, you still get all the benefits. In fact, let's take that one step further and say that if you watch it, I think they go up on YouTube, you can watch on double speed on YouTube, and I try to be very careful the way I speak so that if you listen to me on double speed, you don't miss anything clearly and well enough. And you still get all the benefit of all the healing work, even on double speed. So the original is 1 hour and 15, but then you can do it in 37 and a half minutes and get all the benefits. Efficiency. I love technology. Answer regarding origin of health confirmed. The English, thank you, one of our wordsmiths. Thank you so much. Yes, a very, very precious soul. She says the English word health derives from Old English health, H with the A and the E, which again is, I love this because I'll have to send you that thing about Beowulf because it was just, yeah. Maybe we'll include it. Maybe we'll include it when we send. Can you make a point to include, please, my love? Because for those of you who do get downloads directly from Words and stuff, you will find that it's absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So, which is related to the word whole, a thing that is complete in itself. And that comes from the Oxford Dictionary. Thank you so much. Yes. And also another person says they looked it up. So one lady's saying something in her left knee got stretched and strained yesterday, and it's on the inside part of the knee, and it may be a ligament or tendon. She's not sure why that happened now, but they're about to move. Isn't that rough? Yeah. I may need some type of nutrients for it. Thank you for any info or energy on this, of course. So the knees are the torso areas, and then we've got the torso area, and then we've got the extension of the torso through the limbs. And the hands, the shoulder, arm, hand assembly is where we interface with the material field of creation. And when we kind of put ourselves out into the material field to manipulate and create and manifest what we want to manifest. But the legs, the whole leg is from the hips, then going down the legs and into the feet. That assembly is more about the trajectory of your evolutionary flow. It's moving forward, basically. So this, we affect change in our material field. Both the feet and the legs, we move forward. And so, but there's sort of similar principles that happen in the various joints along the way. And the joint in the case of the elbow, is where we have our resources here. We carry our responsibilities in your shoulders, right? So this is where we have the foundation and the resources and the strength that lets us carry things and do things with our hands and so forth. And then the elbow allows us to extend our strength out into the field of the manifest world. So when we're talking legs, knees, ankles, and feet, we're talking about the knees as being that point that allows us to extend our foundation, and the hips are like this amazing, wonderful foundation that represent, for instance, especially with the lower back, they represent everything you've been up till this point, right? The whole back is like the past. So it's who you are and who you've been and what you've done in the past. But it's also right in the hips and in the pelvis. It's like the whole ancestry is there, because our ancestors are also part of our foundation, right? Our family. And then the knees allow us to extend that foundational energy, that fundamental, that sort of our background, to extend it out into the future of where we're going. So we're kind of looking at a system from the hips into the feet, of a system that transcends or goes through time. So we can think of this system as going through space, right? And the system of the legs and feet as moving through time, the evolutionary process. And that the knees represent that point of expansion forward. And any kind of stubbornness or resistance to the direction will express itself as a problem with the knee. One of the things about both the knees and the elbows is that these joints are unique in the body, that they are unable to make complete circles. So most of the joints in the body can make complete circles, but there are a few, like this one, doesn't really it doesn't do the side-to-side motion. And same with the elbow. The elbow just doesn't do, you can kind of make a circle this way, but it really, this extended, it doesn't do a side-to-side motion. The knees too, they don't like to do those. There's certain motions the knees just don't like. So the thing about the circular form is that it's a form of wholeness or completion, totality, wholeness. So the knees and the elbows, like the duodenum, are, and this point in the mouth, are a point where it's like the options are limited. When you're dealing with limited options, and if for any reason there's anything about those options, that any fear, any frustration, resistance to the fact that the possibilities or the potential seems to be being stripped down, this can come up in the knees. And of course, this is part of that coming back to one's essential nature, right? That when you come back to the essential nature, we strip away that which is superfluous, but sometimes that which is superfluous is seen as part of your potential, of like, yes, but I have all possibilities in me, I can be anything. But then it's like, well, no, we're going to have to get down to just what's basic here. Yeah, Tom and Dorothy had to do that. We moved from a big house into a little one-room apartment. So we had to strip away everything, to let go a lot. And, you're in the middle of a move, it's very possible. If you move, because this friend who's putting this out here is the same age as I am. I think we're the same age, aren't we? Like 1 year apart, maybe? I think you might be a year older than me. But anyway, that's a common move at this time, at this age. In the 60s, this is a common move, is that we go from, our life that was so big and expanded and full, and we needed a bunch of stuff to take care of our children and all that, and then we don't need, and we just downsize. So that's the specific fear that I'm seeing in the knee, is that feeling of, well, if I have to let go of a lot of stuff and downsize a lot of stuff, then I'm letting go of potentials to do things, the potential to be something that I wanted to be, or to become something that I wanted to become. And of course, that's what the legs are all about. That's why it wasn't your elbow that got hurt. It was the knee, because it was related to the evolutionary process of moving forward. That's my interpretation through that. I hope that helps. Of course, there's a cream that I often recommend for the knees. I'll put that. Can you make a point to put the Taspans cream in? Taspans. You can look it up, with cayenne in it. It's absolutely wonderful for bringing circulation into the tendons and ligaments and even the cartilage in the knees, because as we know, one of the problems when you have a joint like that goes out, it's part of the healing process, can take a while because the blood circulation isn't going in that area so much. So I just happened to find, by chance, by such great synchronous good fortune, at a time that I had torn meniscus in my left knee, just an hour or so after I had the tear, I came across a kiosk that was run by energy healers in Colorado, and they had this cream, and I thought, well, isn't that fortuitous? So I bought the cream, and it was part of my healing, and managed to heal up that torn cartilage in I think total healing was 2 months, like 98% in 2 weeks. So after 2 weeks, I was really feeling great, no pain, and walking around completely. But I felt like there was still a little bit something there. It took like 2 months for that last 2% to heal. But I used the cream. It was lovely. Hand chakras also are a good way to bring your healing attention and get all that healing potential getting into the knee there, because we heal ourselves. Oh, and thank you. Yes. So here's another person who also looked it up, and she said, health, Old English, health, wholeness, being whole, sound, or well, from Proto-Germanic Hailitho, from P-I-E, Kailio, whole, uninjured, good omen. More congratulations on the baby. Ha! I did not do the hard work, but yes, thank you. I am in baby heaven. At 6:17, the sound volume dropped dramatically, and it was hard to hear me. Are you noticing my technical advisor, my husband over here? Oh, and here's a beautiful one lady saying that true vulnerability is absolutely the safest place to be. Yeah. Because then you have nothing to hide, right? Oh, the sound got fixed. It was on her side. Okay, beautiful. I'm so glad. Okay. Oh, yeah, here's a lady who's saying she's often felt like she must be bad because her suffering in the past recalls such suffering and repetitive and very scary, deep, awful stuff. And so she felt like she must be, right? Because if you weren't a terrible person, then you wouldn't have suffered. And that's that little logic loop. But remember, logic has the ability, oh, geez, I'm overtime too. But anyway, logic, anything can be justified through logic and reason. You can justify anything. You can justify complete wrong action with logic. So logic is good, and logic has a place in this creation, but it's not, that job is not to justify problems or injustices or wrong behavior, or anything that's outside of the truth. Yeah. Anyway, I'm really glad that healing was good for you, and I hope we can separate that one out and upload it, because I think a lot of people really suffer from that and experience it, and it's absolutely my desire that we all heal together from this, so that we can all come out of this pandemic, among other things, right? the pandemic was part of that whole thing of just all suffering together. Absolutely beautiful questions coming in, like a whole pile of them. Heavens. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, and I also have questions over on my other screen as well. So, as I said, tomorrow we will begin our session with questions. I thank everyone for being with me tonight. It's been absolutely beautiful. When lots of questions come in like this, it's very sweet. I feel like everybody's engaged, really connected in. So, I really appreciate our connection. It means so much, especially after leaving Fairfield, which was such a community, such a sort of tribal, very close community. And now we're out here in Arizona, 5 million people in Phoenix, and it feels a little bit less community-ish. So I appreciate our community and our connection. Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah, thanks for being with me. I really do appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's going to be 11 o'clock Pacific time. But for everybody else, if you haven't, long as you haven't moved, it'll be the same time as always. All right, so looking forward to seeing you all then. Thank you very much. Wishing all the best for everyone. Bye-bye.